And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to present you a killer lineup this afternoon. Joining us again, award-winning author Tracy Clark, and for the first time, the fabulous Faye Snowden. Ladies, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. So happy to have you. Tell us about your books.
You go first, Tracy.
Do I? Okay. Well, I'm Tracy Clark, and I write the Cass Rains Chicago Mystery Series. I'm writing about an African-American female, former cop turned PI, who is working the mean streets of Chicago. In the latest release, entitled Runner, she is looking for a 15-year-old runaway who has absconded from her, what we most consider a perfect foster home. And now Cass has to find her in the middle of a Chicago winter. She's out there in the sort of beating the bushes for a bit, and she finds out soon that she's not the only one looking for this kid. And now it becomes a race. Who's going to find her first? Is Cass going to be able to bring her home safely, or are the opposing forces going to have their way? And it's not going to be pretty for her. So it's a cat and mouse sort of a thing. Chicago winter features prominently in the book, and I think it's a pretty good story.
It is a very good story. I loved it, and I can't wait for your next book coming out in December. We're going to hear about that soon. But first, Faye, tell us about A Killing Rain coming out in June.
Right. So A Killing Rain follows homicide detective Raven Burns. Her father is a serial killer. And when she was a toddler, she actually was involved in some way in what he did. So she has spent her entire life trying to prove herself worthy, trying to prove that she's a good person. And so to make up for his crime, she becomes a homicide detective. So it starts out with a killing fire where she has to stop this ruthless serial killer in Bird's Landing, Louisiana, which is a town I made up. It's a fictional town. And she becomes implicated in those murders. But she eventually, solves that. The conclusion, I won't put any spoilers out there. But in A Killing Rain, Raven feels that she can start her life over again. But she is soon sucked into a new murder investigation of a serial killer when her nephew is kidnapped and people think that he's fallen prey to this serial killer. So it's a race against time while she battles her own interior demons and try to connect with that good part of herself while being mired in all of that evil and blood and stuff that's really not good for her.
Oh my goodness. Well, we have a lot to talk about because there is so much meat to pick on these bones. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We're going to get all into it. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. We are streaming live to 6 different destinations right now on Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. If you've been here before, you know how it goes. Get your questions going in the comments. This is your time to talk to these 2 incredible authors. And Leslie is saying hello from Canada, giving us her signature Canadian hello. Leslie,
I love that.
Erin is saying hi. She said Runner is an incredible book. Erin, absolutely. And Tracy has her next book coming out in December. She is switching it up and giving us a whole new cast of characters with the detective Harriet Foster. Tracy, tell us about Harriet.
Well, Harriet is a homicide detective with Chicago Police Department. She's in her mid-40s. She's lived an entire life outside of the badge. And she is faced after coming back after a 2-month leave because something sort of tragic happened. And she's faced immediately with a new team of detectives and a serial killer that she has to find. This killer is trawling her streets and dumping bodies in weird places, and she's not having it. So she's got to sort of figure out with her team how to find this killer, how to stop these killings, and then deal with her personal stuff that she's got going. It's complicated. I like a lot of mess with characters. I like characters who have things that are sort of weighing them down and they have to deal with, and Harriet is no exception. She's got to do her job, but also fix herself, and that's a wonderful mixture to have in a book, I think.
Absolutely. Dumping bodies in weird places. Let's talk about that. Why, how did you decide where to dump those bodies? What was your research process like? Were you out there driving around Chicago thinking, oh, I'd put a body there?
You would think no, but yes. As I ride around, it just normally, I'm looking for places that are dark and sort of gritty and sort of shadowy. And so when I sort of came up with this idea for this story, I sort of remembered those places. The River Walk looks kind of nice in the daytime. At night, it's quite different. So do Lower Wacker, which looks great when you're going to work at 9 o'clock in the morning. Not so great at 2 o'clock in the morning. So dark and shadowy, gritty, rats, all of those wonderful sort of textual things that Chicago is known for, and that I like to sort of highlight. And so there's a lot of that in Hyde.
Oh, excellent, excellent. MA is saying a new series from Tracy. Yay! Erin saying she can't wait for this December book. Darla saying good afternoon, all. She is very excited for these interviews. Darla, welcome. Always great to have you. Faye, over to you. How do you decide how to kill your body, how to kill your victims, and where to stash your bodies?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And and for me, I like a lot of symbolism. Sometimes I have to pull myself back and say, okay, that's enough. Okay? But for this new book, A Killing Rain, the bodies are all found in places of power, right? Where power kind of reigns. So it's a clue in the book. So that's how I decided to dump their bodies. And as far as how victims are killed, I love coming up with new and unusual ways to dispatch people. So yeah, I just kind of try to, but believable, right? Try to look for new and interesting ways to take. Floyd does, and his serial killers, to take people from this earth. It ain't me, so it's Floyd.
I love it. I love it. That sounds like a trending hashtag. Kathy says, "Oh my gosh, these all sound so good. How to pick the next?" I say vote. I just vote to get them all. Kathy, just get the stack. Get them the stack. Shay with the hobbies. Hey girl, great to see you here as always. She says, "Late, but I'm here. Always a pleasure to have you, ma'am. Thank you." Sharon saying, "New authors to me, and I love it." Sharon, welcome to the conversation. So good to have you as always. Thanks for tuning in. Now, let's talk about you said, Faye, that you are always looking for new ways to dispatch of people.
Yeah.
Fine. Are you researching serial killers? Are you talking to detectives? How are you choosing to do the deed?
I mostly do mine through research of serial killers, and I also watch a lot of investigative for Discovery and Dateline. And one of my warning when my family they're doing something weird or dating somebody that looks a little suspect, I say, "Girl, you're going to end up on Dateline." But so I'm totally into investigative Discovery, Dateline. There's a new Netflix show out there called I don't know if it's new, but it's new to me because I just discovered it. Serial killer and stuff like that. I read a lot, especially those books that are talk about unsolved mysteries of the past or the greatest crimes of the century, and that type of thing. I think when you're writing about serial killers, you have to be really careful because some people think that's a genre that's been over farmed, or it's just too many things out there. So I try to be really imaginative and try to give it like a new little twist while still making it germane to what I'm writing about and relatable to what's going on in the book. Yeah.
Interesting. I had not heard that serial killers were getting passe. I did not know this. Clearly, I am not in the loop. Okay, so many great questions coming in. Tracy, let's kick off with you first. How did you decide to write crime books? Something in your past, and then Faye, over to you.
For me, I sort of decided to write the stuff that I enjoyed reading. I started off with, I think, like most writers, most crime writers, with Nancy Drew and Agatha Christie and stuff like that. That's the kind of things that I enjoyed reading. Of course, then I sort of tried to sort of write my own version of whatever that was. I think I can do this, but I want to put myself on the page. So that's where the motivation came, to sort of write what I like to read. just because it's crime and sort of gritty and bloody and deliciously fun. It's just sort of an accident, accident of nature.
I love it. How about you, Faye?
Well, kind of instead of, like that, writing the stuff you want to read. And I think that the way I started writing is I wanted to write myself into the stories that were being told, right? And I was on another show with Tracy a while back. I mean, last week. I can't believe it sounds like years ago. But we were talking about this. And when I was growing up, I used a lot of television and reading for escape. And the issue was I wasn't finding myself in those stories. So I would take the stories like Star Trek and Bewitched and Wonder Woman, and I would take it, I would make up in my head stories where, it featured different characters, African Americans, all these different characters. And then I kind of just wrote the story wrote myself into the story. And then I started off writing poetry and then some short stories and then what I thought was literary fiction. But I love crime fiction. And the reason I started is that stake, right? You start off with a stake. And the stake that you start off with is somebody's dead and justice needs to be done. And so that to me, gives me a head start to the writing. I can write myself into all these stories or people like me into all these stories. And I just think it's a great genre where you can explore so many different themes. You can transgress and that type of thing. So, yeah. I hope that makes sense.
That makes so much sense. Darla, thank you for the great question. Faye and Tracy, thank you for the great answers. Yeah. Leslie would like to know more about each of your backgrounds and how did you get into writing? So let's start with you, Tracy. Did you always know you wanted to be a writer? Did you do some other stuff first and then infuse that experience into your writing? Let's talk about your path to the page.
Well, I kind of sort of knew early on that I wanted to write. I was one of those weird kids who had sort of a notebook under their mattress that they didn't show anybody with little stories in it. That was me. And then I went to school and I took every English class and every writing class and I progressed through college and high school. I went into journalism as a profession. I am now an editor by day and a writer all the rest of the time. So I'm editing op-eds and comic strips and puzzles and things like that from 9 to 5. And then I'm writing books the rest of the time. But I always knew that writing was going to be my thing. I just didn't know that it was going to take as long as it took for me to actually sort of realize that dream. But I sort of had that seed, that kernel of an idea that this was going to be me. I was going to be that weird little writer. And I sort of made it happen. Knock on wood.
Mm-hmm. I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. When I was younger, I would, and even I was in the military through the Navy and everything. I would write on little scraps of paper, like these little vignettes all over the place, or these tiny little stories, or these scraps of poetry. And I did the same thing Tracy did. I took all the English classes that I could in college. When I was in the military, I did that. But when I grew up really poor, and when I told my parents that I wanted to be a writer, and I've come from a writing family, everybody knew the deal, right? They knew the dealio. They were like, yeah, you're not going to make any money out of that. What's your backup plan? And so when I was back then, computers were really, really hot. I mean, they were, and you could see, I mean, anybody that had any kind of vision could see what they were going to do to our society. And so I decided to join the Navy and go into computers. And just for, I said my plan B became my plan A. And for a long time, I really didn't write. I just, I worked the job because it can be a really intense job. And then it's because I've always felt called to write, that compulsion to write. I just kept that up in the background and just, I started writing and was lucky enough to get published. Yeah.
Leslie is saying, thank you for answering her question. These are such great backstories. Leslie, thank you for the great question. And Tracy and Faye, thank you for the great answers. Let's delve a little deeper. So Tracy, over to you. As you're in your work as an editor, does that help you to be a better writer? Are you, as you're editing, you're thinking, oh gosh, let me never make that mistake, or, oh, this is how I could tighten my own writing up? Or does it not? In fact, are these two separate brains? How's it work?
It's kind of, well, it sort of helps, but also hinders. Because editors are cutting things away, right? If I wrote a book like I edited, it would be 5 pages because I would sort of boil that story down to 5 pages. That's all you need. That's all the newspaper has room for. Let's go. Books are different. You have to expand and sort of add a whole lot of other stuff like backstory and flashbacks and all that. So it was sort of hard for me to sort of make that adjustment from cutting down to the bare bones to expanding to 90,000 words or more. So I sort of have to wear two hats. As an editor, as I'm writing, you're not supposed to edit yourself as you go. You're supposed to just go, write what you've got to write, and then edit later. I can't do that. If I have a comma out of space, out of place, I have to fix it as I'm going, because that's just the way the editor part of it goes. If I know something's not right and I try to push on, I'm still on that other page. I have to go back and fix that and then go forward. So it's kind of sort of a weird dual head in there that I have to sort of navigate. But editing and writing, totally different things, totally different parts of your brain. It's schizo at times, and I just have to. That's how I sort of fumble through it, half and half. Yeah, it's tiring.
Just fumbling your way to greatness.
It's tiring. It's tiring.
You award-winning.
Oh, how I worry. Semicolons, commas, all of it. Dangling participles. I can't have it.
You can't have it.
I can't have it. I can't have it.
I tried taking a course on master, like it was like grammar and what it was and how it came to be and what you should and shouldn't do. It ruined me. I couldn't do it. I had to stop because then every time I would put pen to paper, I was like, that voice in me was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? There's only like 5 places that you need a comma in the whole world. I'm like, oh my
right,
gosh.
Exactly. Why is this sentence 3 sentences long? Stop. Yeah.
Stop, right, yeah.
This is a real problem, though. What about you, Faye, in your career in the Navy, working with computers? Do you ever draw on any of that, infusing it into your books, or is it just 2 totally separate chapters of your life?
I think it was unhealthy for me. I used to keep those worlds I would be like Ghostbusters, you don't cross the streams, keep them completely separate. I mean, for a long time, when I was working corporate and Navy and all that, people didn't even know I wrote. When I published my first book and I got the acceptance letter, I was so happy that I told my boss, oh my God, my book is going to be published. And she's like, what are you talking about? And it was so funny because then the excitement got dampened or kind of tamped down because I had to go back and explain to her that I wrote, and I wrote this book on the weekends and this and that. But lately, I think because I'm older, and I think because of that, I always had that imposter syndrome, why I didn't tell anybody. I just liken it to I write, but in the bathroom on the toilet paper with the lights out, I don't want anybody to know because I pick it up and for imposter. But recently I'm a lot more healthier and I kind of merge the 2 worlds. And now the people I work with, my colleagues, know I write and they get my books and they comment on them, and I don't feel weird about it when I used to feel really weird about it.
Well, it's such a personal thing, isn't it? Because it's such a vulnerable thing to spend years, creating something out of nothing, and then to put it out into the world and hope that people like it and resonate with it. And it's really very vulnerable in a uniquely raw and personal way. And thank you for sharing that you still struggle with imposter syndrome as I do. And so many of us do. Great question coming in from Kathy. She would like to know, for both of you, do you have experts that you work with to make your detectives, quote, believable? If so, how did you and do you get in touch with them? Tracy, let's kick off with you.
Well, going back to the Cass series, she's an ex-homicide detective, so I had to sort of know what that was about, what kind of job she would do, how she would handle it. So I actually asked police officers, how do you do your job? How would you handle this situation? I do that constantly. I do it now. I have a brother-in-law who's a cop. I have family members who are in the department. So when I sort of come up with an issue that I want to sort of have some information on, I sort of send them an email or a text or something. How would you handle this? And that's how I do it. I think most police officers or experts out there are willing to talk to writers. They want to talk about the job they do. They're proud of what they do. So if you just sort of ask them, tag them whenever you find them, and ask them, just ask them politely. And you'll probably get those experts on your side too. But that's how I do it. I needed to know how female police officers work. what they think about, how they approach their jobs, why they chose to be police officers. All that's important to sort of give your character some kind of foundation, some kind of gravitas. So you have to have that information first, and then you sort of jump off that hill, and then you create whatever you're going to create. But it's good to have that sort of foundation there first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And absolutely. What about you, Faye?
I'm for some reason I'm so shy. I just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be bothering them and blah blah blah. But when I was first writing, because I did some romantic suspense before then and that. But I take the police academy classes down at my local police station, and then I bought the manual. I forget his name, and he's so good. But it's a police detective that wrote the manual for homicides and how to investigate homicides. Gosh, I'll remember his name soon. But I bought that manual, and then I have a friend of my son's who just recently, as he works in forensics, so sometimes computer forensics and everything. Sometimes I'll ask him. I do a lot of research. I'll go online and look at manuals from other police departments and all that. I'll do all that too. But I do need to get better at talking to people. You think that would be like easy for me, but I'm just like, oh my goodness, I don't want to bother them or that kind of thing. But I just do a lot of reading manuals. And then my character, unfortunately, she looks at all those rules and she goes, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I just breaks them, because I think it's important to know about, how you're going to break the rules before you break them.
Right, because first you have to know the rules in order to know how to break them. So you got to get a sense of what you're even supposed to do before you can have your character going rogue over there. Ooh, Shay with the hobbies. She would like to know, if a crime fiction book that you think is a great example of craft, what would that book be, and what did or does it teach really well? Shay, great question. Thank you. Tracy, over to you.
I don't know, because I don't read them. I took every writing class there was to take, but at a certain point, you have to sort of just jump. Nobody can teach you how to write. Your voice is your voice. What you put on the page is what you put on the page. You can learn craft elements. You can learn the craft of dialogue or setting or pacing or whatever, but you have to sort of write. And you don't know what you have until you have to actually do it. You just have to sit there and write. I'm pretty sure there are good writing books out there. I haven't read them. Maybe they would be helpful even for me at this point. But that sort of takes away from you actually writing. You have to actually do it. You learn by doing it. The more you do it, the better you get. The better you get, the more you know. And that's how I sort of approach it.
I love that answer, and thank you for empowering us to be bold enough to sit at the table, at the desk, and start to write, because I think so many of us, especially as women, feel like, shy, as Faye said, or disempowered to be able to express our voices. But I think maybe Shay might even be asking, and Shay, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a writer that you look up to in the genre just as a master of craft. Is it Stephen King or Jeffrey Deaver or Walter Mosley, or who do you look up to as just like, that person has craft on lock?
Oh, there's so many writers that I sort of admire. Valerie Wilson Wesley, Sarah Paretsky, Sue Grafton, Barbara Neely, Walter Mosley, of course, he's a master. But those are sort of really masterful writers who have really sort of put their voice and their entire personalities on the page. Whatever character they're writing, they're there. So I enjoy those people. They enjoy most writers. I love writing. I love writers. I love writing. It's a difficult thing. And to sort of see a writer sort of put their heart and soul on a page, you've got my vote. So I have a lot of favorites.
Oh, that's so great. And Shay's clarifying that's exactly what she's asking. Shay, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Got the wavelength going.
What about you? What writers do you look up to in the genre that you're just like, that is an example of that person slaying craft? They just get it. And why?
And I wouldn't say it's so much slaying craft. I would say you could tell by what they're writing that they really enjoy writing. This person is having fun. I don't care if I'm reading, and I know not a lot of people are like me. I'm kind of crazy about it. I'm kind of weird. But if I'm reading a book and if the story's like but you could tell the person is just enjoying the heck out of themselves, I'm like, you go. And I can kind of pick up on that joy, and then I enjoy it. And the examples, of course, there's Stephen King, and I like his work. I like his work ethic. I like how he's a fearless writer. I like how he's just such a hard worker, and you could tell that he gets joy from what he's doing. And then as far as craft is concerned, like Tracy saying, you have so many. Asking a writer to choose their favorite book is like asking them to choose their favorite child. And then you have to explain that love is not a pizza, and you love this one, you love that one, but in a different way, right? But so I would say another one is Tanya French. I hope I said that name right.
Yeah.
If you want to know how to get really good examples of incorporating details that matter into your stories, use Tanya French. She's really good. And then another one is Sean Cosby. And I credit him. I love his books because it's fearless. The writing is fearless, right? You could tell it's fearless with his metaphors and his similes. And you could tell he's having a good time, and you're having a good time, even though it's blood and murder. But I like his books. And then, who else is there? And then you got like the Ralph Ellisons and the Toni Morrison and all that. As far as a craft book, I totally agree with Tracy. If you want to be a writer, you got to put your butt in chair. And when I was writing, very disciplined, and I had a schedule. It was called Bic, butt in chair, and write. But sometimes, I think it was Neil Gaiman who said, and if it's not, I apologize. But I think he said that passion will only take you so far. And after passion, you're going to need craft to get you the rest of the way. And for me, it's always around page 41. Around page 41, I'm like, yeah, got it. Passion, I'm done. And then I have to pull out craft. And there's a really good book that I keep by my bedside. It's by Janet Barre and Elizabeth Stuckley French. And they really beat the craft side to death. So they're like exercises you can do. They talk about how to do detail, how to do dialogue, how to kind of build the house. And then you use your passion to put the flesh and the bones on the house and the rooms and the wallpaper and all that. So, yeah.
Ooh, I love both of these answers. So thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom, and for sharing these specific authors that you love and that you think are just masters of craft. Shay, thank you for the great question. I want to let y'all know that Walter Mosley is coming on Monday. I'm so excited. And Sean S.A. Cosby is coming on in April. I'm so excited to have both of those writers for all of the reasons that Faye just said. And Shay, I just want to echo everything that Faye and Tracy said about you sitting down, BIC, butt in chair, and getting your voice on the page. And you know what? We need more voices. So when you write your mystery, come back to me and I'll host you. How about that? Okay, let's get to some other questions because they are coming in. Okay, Anissa Joy saying hello from Savannah. Anissa, welcome to the conversation, ma'am. Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Kathy would like to know, Faye, were you referring to the book by Lee Laughlin, Police Procedure and Investigation?
No, I wasn't. It was about, it's a G. Do I have it back there? Oh, my Lord. I had to hide it from my kids because it was full of dead bodies. I'm sorry if I just put my back to the camera and I'm not Miles Davis. I am so sorry. I will put it on Twitter. And then you guys can know. And he has updates. I don't even know if he's still alive, but I'll put it. That's probably terrible, but I'll put it on Twitter, and then you guys can see. Yeah.
M.A. Monin saying passion will only get you so far. She loves that. I love that too. And so fascinating to know that it's at page 41 for you. Alan Nunnally saying great answers to those questions. Thank you so much, Alan. Welcome to the conversation. Shay saying thank you so much and sending love and hearts to both of you for this wisdom. Let's get over to some of the amazing press and reviews that your books are getting. So let's kick off with you, Faye. Unnerving Magazine saying full-bodied and dynamic characters carry this one, A Killing Rain, along a mystery tying a brutal past with a bloody present that will keep you guessing right up to the finale. So let's talk about, and I'm going to pop that into the comments right here. Let's talk about that bit by bit. So let's start in with the full-bodied characters. I'm just going to pop it up for a second. But what is the secret, Faye, to creating full-bodied and dynamic characters that will, quote, carry a book along? How do you do it from a craft perspective from page 41 on?
That's funny. And I love Tracy's answer the other night. But I have to get to know my characters. So I have to do like little tricks. This is going to make me sound totally bifurcated. But I interview them. I do little interviews with them. I craft their day, what their day is going to look like. I free write with them. They have a journal. So, and this sounds like a lot of work, y'all. It's not. I mean, I just may be saying, okay, free write like you're Raven, and then I'll free write like I'm Raven. I also do, my characters have a timeline. I know where they go to college. I know, or if they went to college, I know how they feel about religion. And I use a lot of, if you guys ever heard of the book Bird by Bird, she talks about a little bit, Anne Lamont, about how to do characters, what grows in their garden kind of thing. And it doesn't not necessarily have to be vegetables. It could be anything, and what do they care about? What do they tend to? And that's how I build my characters. I can't write a book until I have that character's voice. And sometimes it takes me years to get that voice right. And this one I'm working on now, and Sara, you talked a little bit about you're working on one too, is set in the 1920s. And the voice of the main character is going to be a dual timeline, but it's in my head and I haven't had time to write. But it took me I think, 3 to 5 years to get that voice, which is not really good for a writer if you want to be prolific. So I need to kind of figure out how I'm going to change that.
Oh, I love that. And oh my God, your brain must hurt trying to hold all that information.
Yeah.
And Tracy, over to you. Secrets on crafting. I mean, I love Cass Rains so much. I feel like I know her. I feel like I would go out to the diner with her. I know what I would order. Why? I think I know what she would order. How do you create a character in Cass or Harriet or whatever characters you're writing that is so somebody that we believe to be a real person?
I think a lot of writing is listening. You listen to people around you. You're standing in the grocery store line. The person in front of you has an interesting way of sort of holding their head or talking or walking. You're listening in on conversations in a coffee shop. The way these two people talk to each other might be sort of interesting and something that you can use. So writers are in the world out there walking around like normal people, but they're abnormal. They're listening to you. They're finding what makes you tick. They're taking from you little bits of things that they can use and put on the page. Their brains are always working. We're spies. We're eavesdroppers. We are people who sit next to you in the restaurant. We're listening to our conversation, but are also listening to yours. Those are our characters. That's the stuff that we are sort of gathering like chestnuts to a squirrel or something. And then we use them when we need them. So that's what we do. That's how we live. That's how we operate. Don't invite us if you don't want us to sort of be in your business, because we will be in your business, because that's where we get our material. That's where we get the fun stuff. So that's how we sort of ting off this little human nature sort of a thing, by watching it and then using what we need. And I write, unlike Faye, who sort of plans everything out, I write like a journalist. I write because I have a deadline. I have this much time to get this number of scenes done, and I write really quickly, but meticulously, because that's all the time I have. This is what I have to do in that time. And I write like I am sort of the newspaper is holding for my stuff, and I have to get it in there. So that's how I write. It seems to work for me. I don't plot or anything or outline. I'm a pantser, as they say. I fly by the seat of my pants. So everything is willy-nilly, weird and stressful and tense-filled, and desperation is my calling card.
Ooh, desperation is my
Yeah.
calling card. I love that. Now, Tracy, you are actually listening to real people in the flesh.
yeah.
And then putting that into your writing. Faye, you said you interview these imaginary characters. I think I now need to know if you hear their voices.
I do. And then Tracy, I call that grazing. When you're listening to other people's conversation, I call it great. And I got caught doing that once. I was at an artist colony, and this is where, the people that support the artist colony, we were at this long dinner table, all the fancy dinners and stuff. I had my glass of wine, and then I would just listen to this conversation over here, drinking. I listened to that conversation. I'm at the conversation at the end of the table, and then one of the patrons was kind of looking at me like this, and finally he says, "Faye, what are you doing?" Nothing.
Oh my God.
I'm not doing anything.
Nothing. I was recently walking down the sidewalk, and there was a couple ahead of me, clearly on a first date. And he says to her, so how long have you been single? And she flipped her hair and said, the first thing you need to know about me is that I'm never single. Ooh. And I thought,
oh, come on. That's perfect.
I'm going to put that somewhere, or you guys feel free to use it because it was so tasty.
It was good.
And then she was walking half a step in front of him, and it was so fun. I literally was like, I will walk extra blocks to keep hearing this. Like, I will.
See, no writer can come up with that. It's life.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anissa would like to know, what were your favorite books as a child? Anissa, cool question.
As a child, my favorite all-time book was Harriet the Spy. I carried my copy around. It must have been maybe 2 or 3 years. It was so dog-eared by the time I was done with it that you probably couldn't even read the words off of it. But I loved that book. I still love it. I probably have that copy somewhere in my bookshelf somewhere, but that was my all-time favorite. I would read it over and over again, carry it with me like it was a diamond or something. But that was my first foray into actually picking a book of my own, not having your parents sort of read at bedtime. That was my book. That was my jam right there. And I sort of stuck with it. So then, of course, I progressed to other things, but still a personal favorite.
Mm-hmm. Mine was, way younger, was Ramona of the Past. And I read Ramona of the Past because I'm the middle child. So you guys, that's all I need to say. And I loved her, really identified with her. And then, I didn't get jumped into a lot of books like that. I went right to like poems and stuff. And then just because the way I was raised was really weird. And then I went into a lot of classics. But at a young age, probably way too young. I think I encountered like Ralph Ellison as one of my favorite books of all times. So.
And I'm sorry, Faye, I missed it. It was Ramona the what?
Ramona the Pest by Beverly Cleary.
Oh, Ramona the Pest.
I mean, I used to look at something and it would break. And that was that clumsy. It was like, I swear, I just looked at the lamp, Mom. But yeah, it was like that. So Ramona the Pest, I identified with her, because she was always getting in trouble and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Let's talk about the second half of this. Anissa, thank you for the great question. Let's talk about the second half of this review of yours, Faye, where, and I'm just scrolling back to try to find it, but the first part was about the compelling characters. The second part is will keep you guessing right up into the finale. So that's something that you both do very, very well. But it's a balancing act, isn't it? Because you don't want to get to the end and on page 300 and have someone say, it was the butler. There was a butler. What, George who? This is the first I'm hearing about George, but you also don't want to get to the page 2 and say it's going to be the butler. So how do you do that where you keep them guessing, but you don't make the reader feel hoodwinked?
Do you want to try that one, Tracy?
Well, you sort of have to keep track of your threads. As you're going through your story, you have these little threads that you have to keep pulling along with you. It's kind of like sewing or knitting or whatever. You have to keep track of your threads. So if you get to page 300 and some odd, and you started off with 8 threads and you end up with 6, you've made a mistake somewhere, and you're going to have to go back and get a hold of those other 2. You have to play fair with your reader. You cannot get to the end and a butler shows up, and there was no butler in page 12 or 205 or whatever. You've got to give them the clues. You've got to give them the foundation of the puzzle, And if they can figure it out by page the end of the story, good for you. If not, good for us, because that's what we kind of want. We want that sort of have that surprise ending. We want to have fooled you. But you have to keep track of where your story is going and what elements you've got, all the plates you've got spinning. You've got to keep track of those too. So you have to make sure at the end that you've got all your threads together and that you've played fair. And after that, it's up to the reader to see whether or not it's a satisfying end or not.
Yeah. And you you hit the nail on the head. You got to play fair. And this is like when you talk about the mystery genre, this is where I think that craft is really important. Make sure that you're introducing all the characters that can be the murderer early on, as soon as you can, get them on the page, put them in more than one scene, so you can kind of guess. I have to design my crime and who did it up front. I also interview my killer, find out where they're coming from, why. That's how I learned about Floyd. He's it's a word, I hear their voice as well. And then I have a few red herrings. And as when you do an outline, you don't really stick to the outline, for just, you don't grip it like you're holding on to death or something like that. You kind of like change up things, and, maybe this character is functioning better in this kind of space and you'll move them around. So I do that as well. Yeah.
Darla is saying, great introduction to these two authors, new to her. She ordered both of your books as we were speaking.
Thank you.
And she's so happy. Thank you so much, Darla. You're amazing. And she said she's so happy to hear that Tracy doesn't put ketchup on her hot dogs.
Oh, heck no. No.
I do. I put ketchup and mustard. I'm sorry.
That's a travesty of justice. You cannot put ketchup on a hot dog. It just can't happen.
Ketchup, mustard, relish, onions, and tomatoes.
Who are you people?
Amen.
My husband does that when Tracy's doing to me. My husband's looking at me like, really? Seriously?
Okay.
They're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I guess I don't know.
That's a no-no in Chicago.
I love it. I think we have time for one more question, but I just want to kick off with this one as well. Tracy, Publishers Weekly awarded you a starred review. Congratulations. Raving exceptional. The action builds to an exciting showdown. Those who like their crime novels with a social conscience will be amply rewarded. Let's talk about social conscience. So that's one of my many, many favorite aspects of your books. Mm-hmm. So for instance, one moment that really stood out to me, that has stayed with me in the 8 months since I read Runner, is when Cass is talking to the mother of the runaway girl, who is not up for any Mother of the Year awards. In fact, her child has been removed from her care and placed into foster care, but then is missing from that, the foster home that's supposed to be hitting the lottery of all foster homes. And she says to her, Cass says to the mother, how come you aren't going to the police? Like, this is a police case. And she says, they don't look for us like they do the white girls, is implied. And I'm not quoting this verbatim, but it's just that scene has stayed with me because it's true. There are more Black girls missing than white girls, and those cases are more likely to go unsolved. You don't go into those details, but you just plant this moment, and we feel it as a reader. We get that, and it's in there. How do you do that so well, and how do you plant them without beating us over the head with it? It's just so perfectly done.
Well, I don't think any writer wants to sort of beat you over the head with anything. Mm-hmm. You want to sort of look at these issues, communities that we live in, as characters would see them, as you would sort of encounter them if you were in that milieu. Cass is looking at this woman who's lived a pretty hard life. She has not had it easy, but she's still trying to sort of right herself and to create her family again. Now, she's not looking at her like she's a bad person. This is just a woman who has had bad things happen to her. Some of it she's caused on her own. Some of it has happened to her as a consequence of living in the society that we live in. And so she's looking at her not as a bad person, but a person that something bad has happened to. And she is worthy of the same help and assistance that anybody else is worthy of. And she meets her at that level. That character does the same thing with all the characters that she meets. This is her community. These are her people to a certain extent, and she understands them like a white police officer might not. She is looking at them as family, kind of. These people she understands, the issues that she understands, the issues that she's dealt with and continues to deal with as a Black woman in the society that we live in. So she's looking at it from a different perspective. There are bad things happen to them. They're not bad people. And she gives them the same respect and the same dignity she would give anybody else. So I think that's very important for this character. That's how she gets through her life. That's how she approaches the cases that come to her. And I think that's good for her. I think that gives her sort of a heroic tinge to her, but she's not a hero. She's got flaws just like all the rest of us. She gets stuff right, she gets stuff wrong, and she's just doing the best she can.
And she's doing it so well. I think that's why I love her so much. Faye, over to you. You also take the time to weave in moments, to weave in books with a social conscience. And that in many different ways. Let's talk about that, how you do it so well.
I think, like Tracy said, it's really important that you try not to do it in a conscious way. You want to have your book, in the where it's set. You want to weave in those real life moments as much as possible and make sure that they are real life, right? You don't want to stop in the middle of your action to make a speech, right? Because people are going to see that and they're not going to read it. You also don't really want to read a book that's not, I'm just saying you. When I say you, I'm talking about me, that kind of ignores it either, kind of with a consciously ignore it. I think that what you have to do, because I've made a mistake, and then all these praises are coming from a Killing Fire. We haven't gotten any reviews for A Killing Rain yet. It just went up on NetGalley, I think, like a week ago, and the art's been available since then. But when I was writing A Killing Rain during the pandemic, and I also was writing, but it wasn't set during the pandemic, and I was also writing it during the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests. And I was like, well, I'm going to talk about this. And I weaved in I didn't weave them in. I kind of tried to screw on some of that stuff to the book. And then my editor, bless his heart, he didn't say anything about, I love my editor. He didn't say anything about it. He just gave me back the manuscript and put his changes in. But then when I read it, I'm like, that sounds so false and fake to what's going on in the story. So I promptly unbolted all that bolt-on. My friend who likes cars will call it bolt-on shit. But that bolt-on crap, I unbolted it and took it off. But when I'm reading it, because I'm doing I'm going over the galleys right now, you can tell, you can see the subtext about the struggles that we go through and how we deal and negotiate them. It's already there. You don't have to, consciously. And then the other thing I do, just real quick, is I always start off with a question, right? And then because I'm exploring this societal question, all that kind of comes out in the book. And the question was how basically the difference between good and evil and how far does the apple fall from the tree? That's the question. So, so that's the one I wanted to explore.
And I think it's also more interesting if the reader or the characters sort of have that journey instead of the writer having it.
Exactly.
It's about how the characters deal with whatever they're faced with. It's not how I think about it, but how the character is thinking about it and how the character is going to get through it. And that's where you sort of have to leave it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this, because I love that this has spurred this conversation, because that's a mistake I make. I think I seek so much to be understood. I'm like, did you get it? But did you really get it? But are you sure you got it? And I over explain, and then nobody likes that because I'm making sure they got it. So I think as you said, Tracy, trusting the reader.
Yeah, readers are smart.
Readers are smart. Exactly. Darla is saying she loves these gals. Darla, me too. Aren't they amazing? And what a perfect moment to end on. I want to thank you both for coming on and telling us all about Runner and A Killing Rain. And Faye, you will be back in June when A Killing Rain comes out. And Tracy, you will be back in December when your Harriet Foster book, currently titled Hide, comes out. So I can't wait to have both of you back. Thank you so much for joining me for this Mystery Monday. And I'll look forward to seeing you later this year.
Thank you.
And I'll see everybody else tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central with the New York Times book review crime columnist Sarah Weinman. I'll see you tonight, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.